Hello, this is Cotton Stoops, and as you can tell, Jamie has made some new rally moves for the Chesma Town update. Chesma Town is gonna be receiving a new building in case you didn't know. The developers haven't really said anything about it, so it's pretty good that we're gonna be getting something for that instead of just something that's gonna be probably useless to us PvPers. But hey, new rally moves, we already appreciate that. Jamie has released new rally moves for existing Loomians, a rework of an existing move, and of course 1 mm for 1 Loomian. So, here we go. First off, the Tron Packer line is getting recycled. I wouldn't really see a use for this, mainly because Montreal isn't a good Loomian at all. And I would honestly just use its specialization set or the rev up set. And recycle doesn't really help it out a lot because Tron Packer and Montreal more Montreal, but Montreal would love a lot more consistency because it doesn't really have the damage output, so it just wants to be doing as much damage as it can for a while. So this is pretty good for Tron Packer. I wouldn't use a recycle. Anyways, let's talk about Gecklow. The Gecklow line is going to be getting Mudslide, and in my opinion this is probably the best buff out of the line of rally moves that we got, because Eleguana already has good niches. It has Mudslide now to get rid of hazards. It now has Tase, or it already had Tase to cripple Loomians, and now it has Pivots. So Gecklow getting this is a very good buff to Eleguana. Eleguana already has a really good niche in this metagame, being a Loomian that can pretty much wall Zulong to forever and also deal with air types. So this is a pretty good niche for Eleguana. Do I think it's going to be used Mudslide? Definitely. I'll probably run a mixture of Rejuvenate, Flash and Flee, or Zip Zap, whatever the user wants. Mudslide now, and of course Tase. Full Eleguana support set. That sounds really good to me. However, if you don't want to use that, you can probably just use a mixture of Mudslide and some other moves. I just really would suggest to use Eleguana Mudslide. Not to mention, it also does help it matchups against opposing electric types. Doesn't really help out against plant types, but we don't really need that too much. Anyways, next up we have Puff getting Wave Wrecker. This mainly helps Botox, and Botox does now have Bulk Up, so this does synergize a lot more, so Botox can run more offensive sets. Its speed here is pretty good for outspeeding like most walls. Pretty sure it does with certain investment. So now you can do that with Botox. The main problem I see with Botox here is probably it's not going to be doing too good because there are better water type wall breakers, and I wouldn't honestly use Botox, but Wave Wrecker is just good buff for it. It obviously appreciates it because it loves to be offensive compared to Barblast, which is just a better defensive Loomian than Botox. So Botox getting Wave Wrecker is pretty nice. Next on we have Draco Beam Infernix. I don't like this because it of course ruins your consistency. You can't use a Shoot Blast into a Fire Breath for right now. Instead you have to use 2 Draco Beams in order to make up the damage from your -2. However, this can be decent. Of course, Draco Beam is the best, quote-unquote best ancient stab because it hits the hardest, which I agree with that. And this does help more offensive variants with Infernixes. Admittedly, this does give Infernix a niche over other offensive fire types such as Billoforge, Ikazune, and Eruptodon, so this is pretty good for Infernix. I personally won't be using Draco Beam because most of my Infernixes are defensive ones, so you can use this on more offensive ones. It has a solid niche now. Next up, we have Surebot getting Deep Freeze, which is a pretty good buff. I wouldn't use this, or no, I would use this and I would replace it for Jetstream, have Peace of Mind, Deep Freeze, Frost Beam, no, yeah, Out of Order, and then like Metal Blast, I'm pretty sure. So Surebot getting Deep Freeze, this is pretty good because now it can hit water type switch. Originally, other than Jetstream, it couldn't hit them for neutral damage, and now it can hit them super effectively, which is really good. Surebot overall is not really a good Loomian, but this does help bring Surebot to the right direction. Next up, we have Bunpuff the line getting Timber Thrash, Earthquake, and Brawn Boost. This is a pretty good buff in my opinion. Actually, no, this is not good at all because Baneki has 48 base melee attack, and this doesn't really serve a purpose because Baneki's melee attack set, as you can tell, is not good enough to run mixed Banekis. But you can try to find some niche with it, although in my opinion, Poison Magnified 2 stabs are already good enough. Next up, Embed line is getting Drudge, which I think is a pretty good buff because this does give a niche over other fire types, defensive ones to be specific. For example, Chartiki being the main one and Pyrolin, because now Serenite can be defensive setup Drudge and it can fill a similar role to what Obsidian does with Drudge, but now Serenite obviously has the more threatening coverage. So this Drudge does seem a pretty good thing for Searknight because it can be more offensively oriented compared to the other fire defensive types that are in the metagame. This will probably give Searknight a lot of usage. It might make OU, but no promises here. This is just a pretty good buff for Searknight overall. Next up, we have Snagub with Nab, and I'm gonna be honest, Immunized Barter, Volcanic Ash with just the regular moveset is already enough. Snagub doesn't really have a lot of matchups it would want to have against Loomians with consumables, so Nab doesn't really help you there. Same thing with Snaggle, although actually Snaggle might use it because it can't use Barter Volcanic Ash. So who knows? Maybe Snaggle would use this, but overall Snagub wouldn't want to use Nab. It already has a decent moveset. It's a cool buff, but obviously doesn't really help out the main moveset. And now we're reaching to our final act. Kleptic is getting Tricky Tactics, which does have a good niche, but I wouldn't really call it a good niche overall because Kleptic, or rather Ragoon, already does appreciate the fact that it is a pretty good stall breaker at taking away items and of course provoking Loomians, trading off items with barter. It already does a pretty good job at that. And Ragoon, I'm pretty sure doesn't really have any noteworthy melee attacking matchups, so there isn't really a lot of use for Tricky Tactics. I guess you can use it if you want to, but overall, there's really no point in using Tricky Tactics Kleptic. And next up, we have Missile Blood getting Feral Blast. This is the last rally move, and in my opinion, this is a pretty good buff to Holly Bunch, mainly because Holly Bunch cannot hit plant types super effectively. Now it can, so that's obviously a pretty good buff for it. And now it does have a proper moveset. I wouldn't really use Spectral Burst anymore, but you can if you use it. If you want to use it, I would just use Magnify, I think it has, and then Feral Blast, then the 2 stabs. That's what I would honestly use for it. And now finally, we have the last one of Jamie's long tweet here, which is Swolder getting Bulk Up. And this is overall a pretty good buff. I wouldn't call Swolder good now because of it, but this definitely does help Swolder out a bit, mainly because I think it does do better than what Brawn Boost can offer, and because Swolder is increasing its bulk further and further with Bulk Up, this does help how much time it has in the battle. So obviously Swolder getting Bulk Up is pretty good, probably not meta, but Swolder getting Bulk Up is already a pretty decent buff. And finally, we have the move rework, and you might have heard it already, but it is, of course, it is Nab. So it's gonna be getting Spit Out here, or not Nab, I meant Spit Out. Spit Out's gonna be getting a rework here, and Spit Out's gonna be fixed so that essences and shells will increase the power of the move instead of changing the type, which honestly is a pretty good. I'm not really sure how to feel about this. And yeah, I'm not really sure because this is just I'm hoping it's going to be a better Raging Howl. If not, well, that's going to be kind of an issue. But anyways, Spit Out being increased the power of the move instead of changing the type. This means Spit Out's going to be typeless. I don't know what Jamie means by changing the type, but he might mean that it won't change types anymore, which is a pretty concerning thing because obviously it can't hit spirit types anymore. It can't hit most of the stuff it can in the game anymore. So spit out, I don't know what to think about this. This doesn't really seem good in my opinion. But with that out of the way, hopefully you enjoyed the video. This is just a short update on what has been happening in Loomian Legacy. I might stream the new update. I probably not, but I'll probably just make a video if the building is significant enough. Alright, this is Cotton Stoops signing off to remind you that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.